The good news is full of ironies and counterintuitive conclusions. The last will be first. The least will be the greatest. God's standards are not the ones that we use in measuring human worth. Tomorrow, 9/11, 20 years, there's a movie called Worth. It's about claiming compensation for the loss of family members in that disaster. But the determination of worth is a completely monetary one. That, of course, is not the standard that God uses. Bethlehem, an insignificant hilltop town, had two moments of greatness. David, the youngest of Jesse's sons, was anointed king there. Promises of an unending dynasty and eternal kingship were made to a boy who had been minding his father's sheep, the least likely of Jesse's 7 sons. Promises of an unending dynasty and eternal kingship are the kind of dreams that kings have. The Japanese imperial family at the moment has a problem about succession and keeping a dynasty alive that has no sons. Well, God can make promises that he can bring to fruition. But the promises were forgotten for centuries until the prophecies about the birth of Jesus into the house of David, the line of David, the lineage of King David. Joseph indeed was of the house of David. But he discovers that his not yet wife Mary is with child, conceived miraculously. He wants to walk away from this nightmare, but he learns from angels that he has an important role to play. You will name him. You will give him his legal identity as a descendant of King David by adoption. Another strange way in which God brings to fulfillment a promise. And Joseph had a lot bigger role to play than that. Now, both Joseph and Mary are from an equally obscure village called Nazareth, but providence takes them to Bethlehem for the fulfillment of the prophecy, because that is where the child is to be born, according to the prophets. He's born in what would have been utter obscurity, except for messages delivered by angels to lowly shepherds. Again, not the most promising, perhaps, of witnesses. What is God's mysterious plan? Today we honour Mary because she's probably the least likely human being to be elevated to such a high dignity in heaven. We think of the prelude to this drama playing out with a maiden from an obscure village and not exactly a celebrity. by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not saying that she wasn't full of potentialities for virtue. She certainly was, because she had to be very brave and very courageous. But at this stage, she was just a girl with perhaps not very bright prospects. Well, we can think of how God exalts the lowly. Mary was very conscious of her humility, her humble status. So it's very fitting that we choose this date, any date, for Mary's birthday, and that we celebrate the fact that she gave herself wholeheartedly to God's plan, not knowing how on earth it was going to unfold. It didn't look as though she had all the help and support that she would need to bring God into the world. And sometimes we feel the same way, bereft of perhaps the supports that we need in order to fulfill our God-given tasks. Mary must have felt that even more so than any human being that's ever been born, and she had such a significant role to play. But what we can do now is to think of her in heaven, exalted in glory, and to celebrate what Mary is now, our mother. And she is able to give us whatever we need, because God cannot resist his own mother, and we cannot resist honouring her today and imploring her intercession from heaven.